Before I can start finishing this, I have to very thoroughly and very evenly sand it. And I'm going to be doing that with the random orbit sander. I've got it right here. And in it, I have a 220 grit sanding disc. And I'm going to go over just two parts of this cabinet. It's going to be the end panel here and the front of the face frame. But I do have one thing I need to do before I do any of that, and that's to slightly round over this front corner here, because the vanity top, which is the sink, is rounded on the corner, and this has to match. Thing to watch for when you're sanding plywood like this is not to be too aggressive. You need to make it smooth, but you definitely don't want to burn through the veneer. All right, I finished up with the side and I'm happy with how smooth that is. Now I've flipped the cabinet down onto its back and I'm going to sand the face frame. And what I'm looking to do here is to level up the joints and to make the entire surface nice and smooth. Alright, I'm happy with the face, nice and smooth and even. I got one other thing I need to do here, and that's to ease over the edge of the very corner of this on the inside, because these drawers that go in here are inset, so all this will be flush and none of it will be covered, and you'll be able to see it all. All the sanding is done. I've checked it over and made sure that I didn't miss any areas, because once the stain goes on, there's really no going back. You can sand it again, don't get me wrong, but you have to really wait until the next day, and then you have to try to sand through the stain and it gums up the paper and all that. So better to be thorough before you touch the stain. I'm going to start on the face frame here, and then I'm going to do the panel. I also need to do inside here as well. Like I said, there's going to be drawers in this cabinet, so it really doesn't matter what it actually looks like on the inside, as long as what you see when you look in around the drawers is the same color that's on the face. Now I'm just going to wipe this on. I'm not going to wipe it off with another cloth. If you are careful when you're wiping it on, or reasonably careful, you don't have to worry about lap marks or anything like that. Just put on just enough to be absorbed into the wood without it sitting on the surface too much. And I find that to be the most even look for this kind of stain anyway. So this is where the careful sanding pays off. These sheets came from the big box place, and they get kicked around and scratched up, so you really have to look for that, because nothing magnifies scratches or blemishes more than a dark stain. Now I'm going to let this dry overnight, and I may stain it again tomorrow with the same stuff if it's not dark enough. But I've used this type of stain before, and it usually comes out dark enough. I gave the stain overnight to dry. I brought it out here and set it up on my sawhorses here, because I'm going to spray it. I was originally going to paint it on with a brush, but I decided that I'll probably get a more even coverage if I spray on several thin coats rather than trying to brush on 2 or 3 thicker coats. So what I have here is the same stuff I use on my floor. It's a tinted polyurethane, and what it'll do is it will darken this up and it'll even out the color a bit, I think. I'm going to try and see how it looks. Now, one benefit of spraying is that it goes on real thin. That means it's going to dry very fast. I'll be able to come out here in about 10 or 15 minutes and put on a second coat. After the second coat goes on, I will lightly sand it with 400 grit and continue on with more coats until I'm happy with the coverage. What I ended up doing here was giving it 4 coats of the color stuff. Because after I got the first coat on, I found that it was drying a little bit too slow, so I put on another one, thinking that I'll speed it up. And then I thought to myself that it just makes more sense to build up the coats to the color I want, and I have it now, and then let that dry, and then sand it, and then give it the clear. And that's what I'm going to do now. I've got some 400 grit paper, and I'm just going to rub it over. Then take this dry paper towel, wipe off the dust. All right, I get the gun loaded up with just clear polyurethane this time. And that's to do the top coats. I've already got 2 coats on the side here, and I'm getting ready to put the second coat on the front. After that, I'm going to give it about, I don't know, about a half an hour for that to dry up a bit more. Then I'll give it another couple of coats and I'll call it done. I'll be able to bring it in and install it. Now, I've got to go through the whole process again for the drawer fronts. I didn't make those yet because when I get this installed, if it's a little bit out of square, and that's beyond my control, I hope it isn't, but anything's possible, it allows me to make the drawer fronts slightly out of square to match. It's not anything you'll see, but you'll wind up with a nice straight line on the sides there that looks good after it goes together, because these drawers are going to be inset. They're going to be, flush with the front there, and you'll see the lines, and it'll be very noticeable if they're off. So what I've done is I've written down the recipe for what I've done on the side here, just in case I forget. And that's the sanded 220, the red mahogany stain, the 4 coats of the tinted urethane, and then it'll be 4 coats of clear. And then it all should match.